Hello everyone, welcome back to episode 94 of the Card Combo Show with me, Chocobilly. I probably shouldn't say welcome back and then to the episode number, because then it sounds like I'm reintroducing episode 94, but I'm not. I'm reintroducing the Card Combo Show, and then it's episode 94. Welcome to Card Combo Show, episode 94. This week I'm going to be looking at Zack from Opus 11, Cyclops from Opus 2 way back when, Gargas from Opus 17, Minwu from Opus 17, and Man in Black from Opus 17. First up we have Zack, a 1CP 8k fire forward with the text, at the end of each of your turns, choose one forward your opponent controls, discard one card from your hand. If you do so, deal it 5,000 damage. So this is a mandatory trigger. If your opponent controls a forward and you have Zack on the field and you have a card, you have to discard and deal their forward 5k. Lunith, so 2 mandatory triggers if your opponent controls a forward, I think. Well, technically you have to select one of the two. Actually, you have to select an option and then choose one. You could just choose one job warrior of light, and then there's no legal target, so it wouldn't really matter because he can't choose himself. But yeah, ultimately I'm focusing on the choose one forward, deal it 1,000 damage for each job warrior of light or fire character you control. So in mono fire, this card can be pretty broken given the fact that every turn you can just hit something for, well, you got 5 backups and Lunith 6k. But even if you've got a few backups and then Lunith and Zack down, that's still pretty decent because they're both pretty cheap forwards, so they work nicely together. Again, both mandatory triggers, and then let's say you've got 3 backups, Lunith and Zack. You go to combat, you deal 5k to something, you pass your turn, you discard a card with Zack, at which point you then get to deal 5k to another thing as well, so potentially 10k to one forward. So yeah, 2 mandatory triggers and fairly cheap ways of just dealing a decent portion of damage. Black Waltz 2. So when Black Waltz 2 is discarded from your hand due to an ability, choose one forward, deal it 4,000 damage. So with Zack, that would mean that you are dealing 5k from Zack and then 4k from Black Waltz 2. So you're getting even more value for money with the discard. So you're dealing a total of 9k something, which is really nice. Zonde. So when he enters the field, choose up to 1 fire forward of cost 1, of cost 3, and you break zone and play it onto the field, and at damage 5, you also get to choose of cost 2 and play it onto your field. But yeah, Zack is a nice, cheap forward with a decent power to be played back onto the field. Now, he does have the drawback of the fact that you have to discard for his ability, but chances are, if you've paid for Zonde, you don't have much of a hand left anyway. But moreover, it's just a case of, even if you have to then go past turn, and Zack is then having to discard for something with potentially 3 things coming onto the field aside from Zonde. Hopefully you'll be killing something, especially given the fact that Zonde is basically a mono fire card. Yeah, if you're bringing in Zonde, 3 other forwards, and then you're going to pass turn and discarding with Zack, hopefully at least those other 2 forwards have either played something and dealt damage or dealt damage in some other means. Bards, so the forwards are cost 1, you control gain haste, I can speak, I promise. And then when Bards forms a party and attacks, you may search for a forward of cost 1 and play it onto the field. So nice to be able to search Zack, and nice to be able to give him haste as well. I mean, to be honest, a Bards Boko deck, just run any at least half decent 1 cost forwards, and Zack is that. He is pretty decent power, has a nice means of hurting something, and yeah, giving him haste is also quite nice. Tifa. So, the category 7 forwards other than Tifa control gain plus 2,000 power and brave. So Zack becomes a 10k brave 1 CP forward, and then at damage 3, which is pretty easy to get to, Tifa gains the category 7 forwards you control cannot be broken by opposing summons abilities that don't deal damage. So you will have a 10k 1 CP forward that's got brave and cannot be broken by summons abilities that don't deal damage. That's pretty good going. Given the fact that Zack will consistently be dealing damage to your opponent's forwards as well if they stick on the field, it means that Zack will be a forward that they want to try and get rid of, but it will be really hard because of the fact that Tifa's there as well, kind of keeping him alive. So then at that point they are either relying on just non-targeting things, so Shantoto, Susano, things like that. But still, that's a pretty horrible board for them to come up against. Right, next up we have Cyclops, a 3 CP lightning summon with the text EX Burst. All forwards your opponent controls lose 3,000 power until the end of the turn. So 3k power isn't as monumental as it used to be, but still on an EX Burst, and minus 3k to all your opponent's forwards is better than nothing. Venera Finesse. So when she attacks, you can pay a crystal. When you do so, all the forwards your opponent controls lose 5,000 power till the end of the turn. So crystals are pretty easy to come by, so getting a crystal shouldn't be too hard. That also makes her cheaper, and then she also has haste, so she can attack. So yeah, I don't know, pay 1 for her, she attacks, you then remove the crystal, minus 5k, you then cast Cyclops, that's total of minus 8k to all your opponent's forwards. That's really strong. I mean, in some ways, well, in a lot of ways, power loss is better than damage because of the fact that power loss, even if a forward cannot be broken, it is, if it's a, I don't know, a 10k forward that has a text cannot be put from the field to the break zone, or no, sorry, cannot be broken. Technically that would still work anyway, but if the forward's power is reduced to 0, it gets put from the field to the break zone. Not considered broken, just put from the field to the break zone, because a forward cannot have 0 power, therefore it is a rule processing of it having no power, break zone. So yeah, these two cards together, a fair bit of fun. Man in Black, so just constantly being able to replay Cyclops and minus 3k your opponent's board is quite fun. Now, you do have to pay the 3/4 Cyclops every single time, but it's still quite irritating for your opponent. I mean, it's untargeted, so it means even if they're the likes of Orin or forwards that can't be targeted by summons, doesn't matter. It's still minus 3k their entire board. There are cards which kind of do the same sort of thing for cheaper, so the Light Rain springs to mind, and there are quite a few others as well. But either way, it gives you that kind of versatility. It doesn't always have to be Cyclops, for example, but being able to combo Cyclops maybe with another attack or another ability to be able to then kill a forward. Either way, it's really nice to just constantly get that recursion of minus 3k to your opponent's board. Simon. Put Simon into the break zone, choose one category FFT card in your break zone, add it to your hand. Cyclops is an FFT card, and one of the good things about Simon is get yourself an FFT card back to hand. Doesn't have to be a character, so summons work as well. Vayne, so yeah, I mean, all your opponent's forwards are minus 2k already, and all your forwards are plus 2k. Your Cyclops, they're now minus 5k. Attack with Veneer Finesse, and remove a crystal, they're now minus 10k. Not much is going to be surviving that onslaught. Rydia, you cast Cyclops, minus 3k to their board, and then you get to minus 3k from Rydia's ability as well. So one forward will become minus 6k, and another forward will become all the others will become minus 3k. Another reason why power loss is better than damage is because if your opponent, say, has taken 3k, and then you want to do a further 3k on top of that, they might have some sort of damage mitigation ability, which means that, I don't know, let's say the next damage is reduced by 1. They then take that further 3k, they now only have 5k on them. So there isn't anything in the game which can reduce a power loss ability. Now, you can increase power of a forward, which is kind of working against the Cyclops, and that's where things start to get really janky. But basically, power loss just kind of interacts a little bit better, and is a bit more reliable way of killing things. But that's one of the reasons you don't see too many cards with that sort of effect on these days. And when you do, they are pretty strong. So Veneer Finesse is a great example of that. She's really strong ability. Getting crystals isn't hard at all. And there's, I mean, especially now, there's so many reliable ways of getting crystals. The first one kind of springs to mind, to be honest, is Realm. Being able to play Realm onto the field to bounce herself back to your hand to just get yourself a crystal. That's paying 3 for a crystal, but it means that every single time you can play her to get a crystal back. So unless your opponent is somehow breaking Realm before she returns to your hand, you will be giving yourself a crystal every single turn for Veneer Finesse. I should have just talked about Veneer Finesse rather than Cyclops, shouldn't I? But either way, power loss is really good in my opinion. Right, next up we have Man in Black. I absolutely love this card. So 5 CP, 9k lightning forward. With the text, you cannot play Man in Black or card named Golbez while already in control of the other character. Spoilers. When Man in Black enters the field or attacks, choose one summon in your break zone. Remove it from the game. You can cast it at any time you would normally cast it. When you cast a summon, choose one up to one forward. It gains this forward cannot attack or block until the end of the turn. So a few really cool things about this. If Man in Black dies after removing a summon, you still get to cast that summon, doesn't matter. And then when you cast summon, choose up to one forward. So you can choose your own forwards. So it might be a case that you have a forward that has to block. You can cast a summon to maybe break one of your opponent's forwards, but also make it so your forward that normally would have to block doesn't have to block. So, yay. So Yuna, the cost required to cast your water summons is reduced by 1. I did a deck profile recently, the most recent one actually, I think, and this talks about lots of these cards now, but it's worth going over just in case you haven't seen that. But yeah, Yuna reduces the cost of your water summons. Man in Black will cast a summon as if you owned it, remove the summon you can cast as if you owned it. So let's say you have a Tomos and you remove that from the game. I'm talking about the 3-cost water summon Atomos. It now only costs you 2, which is fantastic. And you can just keep on replaying that summon with Man in Black, which is gross. Terra. So, when she enters the field, you can reveal any number of summons from your hand. When you do so, choose up to the same number of characters as the summons you revealed, dull and freeze them. So you get to a pretty nice entry ability, to be honest, if you're running a heavy summon deck, which with these two, you probably would be. But then, when you cast a summon, choose up to 1 forward and up to 1 backup, dull out or freeze the former and dull or freeze the latter. Now, if you're doing that and you're attacking with Man in Black, and let's say you're casting, I don't know, 2-cost Shiva that dulls 2 forwards. You get to dull 2 forwards, you get to freeze, dull or freeze a forward and dull or freeze a backup, and then Man in Black also gets to make a forward not block or attack, which is really strong. And again, when you cast a summon, choose up to 1 forward, so it doesn't matter when you use Terra's ability either. So you could, on your opponent's turn, they go to attack, you cast Shiva, you can now make it so 4 of their forwards cannot attack, which is really strong. And again, when Man in Black attacks, he gets to remove that summon. You can cast it whenever you want, and being able to recur these summons to keep on casting them is just scary strong. And I haven't built a deck with these two yet, but I'm gonna. Braska. I mean, what more is there to say? Just discard a summon, deal 7k to something. It's now in the break zone, which allows Man in Black to attack, remove it from the game, and you can just keep on casting that summon from there on. And you can just, I mean, there are loads of decks now with like something stupid like 20 or more summons in the deck, and you just get Braska on the field, get Man in Black on the field, keep discarding, keep attacking, keep recasting the summons, job's done. Brunhilde. So, I mean, like one of Fire's best summons, and not the best summon, next to Amaterasu. Cast Brunhilde, deal 5k to something, it's in the break zone, you attack a Man in Black, get Brunhilde back, cast Brunhilde again, you get to 5k that same forward, you now get to draw 2 cards. Pretty nice. And you also 10k something, and you've made something not be able to block as well again, which is really cool. Right, Remora. So, before paying the cost to cast Remora, you can pay a crystal to reduce the cost required to cast Remora by 2. And then choose 1 forward you control and 1 forward opponent controls until then turn the former gains 7,000 power and the latter loses 7,000 power, which is pretty decent. It means that Man in Black becomes huge if you're going for Man in Black as the choice to buff, and whatever forward loses 7,000 power, which is enough to just outright kill a forward, to be honest. But again, the cost reduction works for this as well, because Man in Black removes the summon and you treat it as though you own it, so you still can use a crystal to reduce his cost. And the fact you get on keeping to recasting Remora means it works really well with Aquila. So when you cast a summon, gain a crystal. This effect will only trigger once per turn. You're going to be casting probably lots of summons because Man in Black is allowing to recast those summons. Remora can then be basically permanently a 2 CP summon, so you can just keep on buffing stuff and killing stuff, hopefully. Obviously, all this stuff is in an ideal world. Aquila or Man in Black probably won't stick around long enough to see this constant recursion of Remora, and a very cheap one at that, but still works quite nicely when it does. Ramu, Lord of Leven. Yep, so when Ramu or a lightning summon deals damage to a forward, break it. So again, just constantly replaying that same summon, dealing damage to your opponent's forwards, works quite nicely. Raiden, even better. Choose or deal 2,000 damage to all the active forwards opponent controls. So you can play Man in Black onto the field to remove Raiden from your break zone. Then when you play Ramu or with Ramu on the field, once your opponent goes or tries to pass out their main phase 1, cast Raiden, break all their forwards. Pretty gross. Yeah, obviously you need to be kind of careful, because if you're relying on Ramu's haste as well, because if you have 2 or more, is it 2 or more lightning summons? 2 or more lightning summons in your break zone, then you don't want to be removing too many with Man in Black, otherwise he won't gain haste. But either way, being able to just keep on replaying that one Raiden, which itself is a super cheap summon to break all your opponent's forwards, is pretty tasty. Mind Flayer. Just disgusting. Just keep on replaying Mind Flayer and keep on stealing your opponent's cards and casting them. If you've got Yuna on the field, this becomes a 3 CP summon. If you've got Yuna and Yunaleska the forward, which also reduces the cost of summons, and it costs you 2 CP to cast one of the top 2 cards from your opponent's deck. Grim. Famfrit. Yeah, so a weird card, but this is more just to elicit how effective just a 1 CP summon can be. Normally, these sorts of cards aren't worth playing that much because of the fact that it's also a card out of hand. So yes, you're getting to draw a card off of Famfrit potentially too, but you're paying 1 CP, which will be 1 backup, and then the card Famfrit out of your hand, which isn't fantastic. However, if Famfrit just serves as, you know, discard fodder of something else, a nice EX potentially, but ultimately you are getting to constantly replay Famfrit and constantly draw an additional card for 1 CP, that's not too bad. Moreover, if your opponent's at 5 points of damage, you get to keep on drawing 2 cards. Just constantly repeating that Famfrit of 2 cards to hand with an attack on mana black is quite fun. Alright, we have Minwu. So a 5 CP 8k water forward. Before paying the cost to cast Minwu, you can remove 3 summons each of a different element in your break zone from the game to reduce the cost required to cast Minwu by 3, which is a bit of an ask. Maybe if it was in Earth, then maybe, and Water has its means of casting multicolor summons, but still, a bit of a weird one. And the fact that you remove 3 from the break zone to reduce its cost by 3 is, alright. I think it should have been maybe remove 2 to reduce by 3 would have been a bit better, maybe. I don't know. And then pay 0, choose one ability that's choosing a forward you control, cancel its effect. You can only use the ability once per turn, but you can use it in your opponent's turn and your turn. So, pretty nice. Neo X Death. Horrible card to play against, I know, but when Neo X Death is chosen by your opponent's summons or abilities, your opponent selects one character they control, put it into the break zone. If they select it with an ability, use Minwu to cancel it. Still triggers Neo X Death's effect, but Minwu will cancel the effect, so they basically have to destroy him with a summon or 2 abilities, at which point they lose 2 characters, which is, you know, not a bad trade-off for you. Cecil. So your opponent has to pay the additional 2 CP whenever they target anything of yours with summons or abilities, and then if it's an ability, use Minwu, cancel it. Not bad. Orin. So your opponent, if they're targeting something, has to target Orin first, at which point you can then, again, abilities, cancel it with Minwu. So your opponent now has to get through the fact that they have to target Orin, and then when they do target something, it gets cancelled. So that's a lot of stages for them just to be able to break potentially another annoying forward as well. So it might be that they just want to get rid of Minwu, they still have to target Orin first. Bear in mind the fact that they could be running some summons which target specifically forwards of cost 5 or more, cost 4 or more, at which point Orin doesn't work as well, and also summons, so you can't cancel it with Minwu, but that's why you run some other forms of protection maybe. Like Unsanganashi! So yeah, put Unsanganashi into the break zone, activate all the forwards you control, they cannot be chosen by opponent's summons abilities this turn. That's a damage 5, and then obviously you can just put it into break zone, choose one forward you control, it can't be targeted, which is really good. You could also potentially go for Cleone as well, which just cancels the next summon that is cast, but that also includes your own. So if you're running Cleone, you probably want to go for a more monster-focused deck. So yeah, but still, that's not a bad play at all. Mecha Chocobo. So Mecha Chocobo cannot be chosen by summons. Just straight up cannot be chosen. And then you can use Minwu, so if it's cast by an ability, it gets cancelled. So they have to try and either target it with 2 abilities, or they have to use some form of broad sweep effect to get rid of both of them. So it's not too bad. And Mecha Chocobo can be breaking quite a few forwards. Obviously, when Mecha Chocobo is blocked, it has to be broken. So it's kind of weak in that regard, but still, if it's getting to break even a couple of things, that's not bad value. It's a weird card that hasn't really seen much play, but I quite like Mecha Chocobo. I think there's maybe a place for it. I'd like to try and run it again at some point. And yeah, the fact I undervalued the fact that it can't be chosen by summons. So making it so it can't be chosen by abilities as well isn't too bad. Also, something I just noticed about the card. Firstly, there's a little Moogle on its chest. I've played some of WoF, but not a huge amount. So there's a little Moogle on its chest, and the little red button is like the nose. Is there like a Moogle in there controlling him? And secondly, he's kind of going, ooh. If you look just beneath his beak, he's got like a little thing. It looks like a little camera poking out. It's going, ooh. I don't know, that's what goes through my brain anyway. Riku. Talk about old cards. So if you control a card named Yuna, Riku cannot be chosen by summons, and she gains plus 2000 power. Use Minwu, she also cannot be chosen by abilities. Well, sorry, the first ability it chooses gets cancelled. So again, another means of making it so that she's quite awkward to get rid of. If you have Pain on the field, then she has that ability as standard anyway, which is really annoying. But there isn't currently a Pain backup. So, I mean, you can have the unit backup, which still triggers Riku's effect. She still becomes plus 2k, and then have Minwu on the field to make it so that she can't be targeted. Or, again, the first ability is cancelled. She doesn't have any other additional effects to that, though, so she is just a kind of AK forward, which is fine, I guess. Just something I thought was funny, and I just wanted to kind of look at it again. Also, something that I never realized throughout the entirety of Opus 1 is the fact that if you control Yuno/Pain, Riku gains plus 2000 power and cannot be chosen by abilities or summons. That also includes your own summons or abilities. So, if you do have Pain on the field, you can't use Minwu to target her. Now, obviously, she can't be targeted by abilities anyway, so, you know, that's redundant, but you see where I'm going with this. If you had some other ability you wanted to target Riku with, and you have Pain on the field, you can't choose Riku, which is kind of funny. Finally, Gargas. I love this card so much. 2 CP 5k wind forward. With the text, the forwards your opponent controls lose 2000 power for each poison counter on them. At the beginning of the attack phase, during each of your turns, choose one forward your opponent controls, place one poison counter on it. And then Bio, which is just an S, choose up to 2 forwards, place 3 poison counters on them. I really like this card. I've been waiting for ailments in the FFTCG for a while now, and finally we've got poison, and I really like that. And counters are a decent way to do it as well, I think. And this is pretty much how I expected it to work. Maybe slightly differently, like if something had a poison counter on it, then every single turn it would take like a tick of damage or something. So it always starts the turn with damage on it, because that's kind of how poison works, but I like this means as well. So yeah, every single turn it keeps on accumulating more poison, at which point they will slowly die because their power will be going down. So similar sort of thing, and in some regards this is actually potentially better. Yagudo, so when it enters the field or you use his ability, so pay 2 wind, dull, put Yagudo into the break zone, choose one forward, it gains plus, its power becomes 4000 to end the turn, sorry. So if your opponent's forward has 2 counters on it, Gargas on the field, you play Yagudo onto the field, that forward now becomes 4k power, it has lost 4k, it just instantly gets put into the break zone. So, and this way to be able to get rid of something potentially problematic. Obviously, if they do have a power buffing card, so let's say they have, I don't know, Legend Squall on the field and Lebro as a backup, Squall will be a 9k, you play Yagudo, it becomes a 5k, so you'd need 3 poison counters on Squall with Gargas on the field. Barbarosia. So choose a forward, its power becomes 1000. With Gargas, that you only need 1 poison counter and that forward just pops. Black Waltz 2. So yeah, Gargas is a job black mage, which is a bit weird. He's the only black mage in wind, so the chances of you running like a weird black mage deck in wind fire is pretty slim. However, it might work, to be fair, because you could, I mean, there's a fair few black mages in fire, so you've got Porum, Vivi, Black Waltz 2, I think that's probably it. So not a huge amount, but then you've got Gargas as well, so at least you have that discard for Black Waltz 2's effect. But then in wind you have a lot of power setting and power reduction, so you know, those two combined might be a nice little synergy there. But either way, it's just nice to note that Gargas is a job black mage. Diablos, so choose one forward, its power has been increased or decreased, break it. So as long as it's got 1 poison counter on it and Gargas is there, Diablos is an instant break. Glacier Walazette, just remove a crystal, use Gargas as S, and 2 forwards gain 3 poison counters on them. Nobody needed to be told this, but just going over it anyway. Naja Salahim, so something that I didn't realize about this card until Gargas came out. Naja Salahim cannot be chosen by opponents or summons or abilities. When she deals damage to your opponent, choose 1 character. Select 1 counter placed on it, double counters of the same type as the selected counter on that character. So you can choose your opponent's forwards, because I think Gargas is one of the first forwards or first cards in the game to put counters on your opponent's forwards. And because of that, I never even thought about the fact that Naja Salahim can choose your opponent's forwards. So yeah, you can attack with Naja Salahim, hopefully it won't get blocked, and if your opponent's forward has 2 counters on it, it now has 4 counters on it, at which point it loses 8000 power, which is pretty significant. And there we go, folks. Zack, Cyclops, Mana Black, Minwu, and Gargas. So yeah, lots of really fun cards. I really like Gargas. I mean, I've always been a fan of Power Loss anyway, as you can probably tell, because it's quite strong. And something like Veneer Finesse, really good. Gargas, a lot of fun. Cyclops, yeah. And Man in Black, I think is just a fantastic card. Just be able to constantly keep on replaying cards is really cool. I have yet to really test out Minwu properly, but to be honest, I don't know how good he really is. He's an expensive card, and even though he has a means of reducing his cost. You need to have those 3 backups, 3 summons in the break zone to be able to get rid of him, to be able to play him onto the field a bit cheaper. At which point he's only a 2 CP, which is okay, I guess. But water has means of recurring those water summons, or actually no, they have to be of different elements anyway, don't they? Sorry. But yeah, water has means of recurring those summons, so you probably would still want to be able to get to them, so I don't know. And then yeah, Zack, fantastic card in Fire Lightning. It's really, really strong. Fire Lightning has a lot of good cards now, which allow you to just outright break stuff and just be able to do little bits of chip damage to finish things off with things like Zack, and then just outright breaking potentially as well is a lot of fun. Zack is an at the end of the turn ability though, so it's worth noting that nobody can stack anything at that point. Abilities will stack that trigger at the end of the turn, and if there are options, you get to choose those options, but other than that, nobody can stack summons or abilities if you weren't aware of that. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, guys. Stay safe, be lucky, and I'll see you in the next video.